Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is Policy Talks, brought to you each month by our Williamson Chamber called Williamson, Inc. Appreciate all the live audience we have here at Columbia State this morning. We've got folks listening in on WKAKM and watching on Channel 3, Comcast Channel 3 with Creed's WCTV audience. And I think there's a YouTube audience somewhere, isn't there, Creed? I don't know how to get to it, but WCTV on YouTube. So if you want to actually watch it and you're listening on the radio, just tune in there. But we've got a full slate of our legislative delegation here this morning, and we're excited because a couple of our members that have not been able to be here are able today because of the change in schedule a little bit. Usually we're here on the last Friday, but there was a conflict last Friday, and we moved it a week, and as a result, we're able to have Senator Hensley with us here and Representative Bulzo. So let me go down, if I can get this right, by seniority. With us this morning, we have our Senate Majority Leader, Jack Johnson, who represents our 27th district now here in Williamson County. Our senator from the lower part of the county and in I guess Spring Hill and south of there, Senator Joey Hensley. We're glad to have you with us this morning, Mr. Hensley. And Sam is now the senior member of our state House delegation, right? Sam Whitson from this NA. And representing our 65th district here in Franklin. And Todd Warner's bringing up, he's our next senior state representative here, representing, it's the 92nd district. Todd, you're from Chapel Hill. And then Jake McClendon and Gino Bulzo, both representing us here in Williamson County. Gino is in Brentwood, and that's the 61st district, and Jake is 63rd district, which is mostly the eastern part of Williamson County, all the way north to south, I think now, isn't it, Jake? So we're got lots of folks to ask questions to this morning. What we're not going to do today is talk about what the media has been having a frenzy on over the last couple of weeks. Honestly, I think that's been covered adequately, and the legislators have done a lot of business that's not been reported very well, and many of them affecting us here, particularly locally. And so that's what we're going to spend our time on this morning for the most part. Y'all have passed a budget since the last time you were here, and I'd like to talk about kind of the bullet points of that budget, and get each of you to tell us a little bit about what you were focused on as far as your own personal interest in the budget. But Jack, I know you carried the governor's budget, so you know every item, I guess, pretty intimately, but the transportation bill was the big one this year. We now have choice lanes, which y'all don't like to call toll roads, but explain what ended up actually happening after all the discussions, and tell us what you see happening here going forward.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you again. Dave, good to be back with you. And I was thinking, is this the first time we've had the entire Williamson delegation all together? I think for a forum like this. So this is somewhat of a historic occasion. So very excited to have all of us here together. Some of us have been here at various times, but I want to particularly welcome my good friend, Senator Joey Hensley. Joey and I have served together for a number of years in the state Senate, and he is a very well-respected member of our body, and I was very excited with redistricting that, of course, he was able to join our delegation representing Spring Hill. So great to have Joey with us, and then also Representative Bulzo, who has been a very welcomed addition to our delegation here in Williamson County. So I know it's their first time to be able to join us here, and we're very excited to have them. So you're right, Dave. Obviously, the budget, about a $56 billion budget. Obviously, it is balanced. We have a constitutional requirement for it to be balanced. Our state has never been in stronger fiscal condition than we are right now. We continue to have significant record surpluses in terms of our revenue collections over what we spend. We continue to manage our budget in a very conservative manner. One of the key things that we do and have done in recent years is even though we have an increase in recurring revenue that is coming in every year, that's baseline. That's like getting a raise in your job, but yet we don't increase our recurring expenses. We take that money and use it for one-time purposes that will save us money into the future, take care of things that we can write a check for one time. And to put it into perspective, when we show up next year to start contemplating next year's budget for the following fiscal year, when we walk in on day one, if nothing changes with our economy, if we don't increase our revenues, if our economy doesn't grow, which we anticipate it will, we will walk in day one with a $1.6 billion surplus. Because we did not recognize that in our base. And it gets a little accounting gimmicky there, but that's a very important thing for you to know. And that dovetails into the transportation bill that we passed, which is significant. We allocated $3.3 billion to go towards road projects in the state of Tennessee, $3 billion to our state road fund, $300 million down to local governments in what we refer to as the state aid program. To put that into perspective, we typically allocate $21 million a year to go down to local governments to help with local road projects. In this coming fiscal year, that goes from $21 million to $300 million. And that's a great example of us using one-time money to help solve a problem into the future. We have a $26 billion hole. When you add up every road project that needs to be done in the state of Tennessee now that's been identified as needed, the price tag is $26 billion. That's in today's dollars. The gas tax that we use to fund road projects generates about $500 million a year. $500 million a year, $26 billion price tag. So that $3.3 billion is significant. That's going to go to help rural communities across Tennessee with rural road projects. Obviously in your more urban and suburban areas where we live, where you have congestion, it's going to go towards helping those kinds of projects as well. Another thing we did in that legislation is streamline the bureaucratic process through which we build roads. It takes a long time to build some of these road projects, to design them, to engineer them, to buy the right-of-way, and then to ultimately do the construction. And so what the governor's goal was, and we approved, is to try to get that bureaucratic process down from sometimes for a big project, you're talking 10, 12 years. And we want to get that down to 5 or 6 years to be able to get those big projects done. And then, yes, finally, we did authorize in very limited circumstances where you have high congestion on interstate roads, we did authorize the use of choice lanes. We looked at Florida, what Governor DeSantis has been doing there, what Greg Abbott's been doing in Texas, Brian Kemp in Georgia, in order to get some of these bigger, more expensive projects done through utilizing choice lanes. So a lot of things we accomplished. It was actually a very, very productive legislative session, so I'm grateful for the opportunity that we can come and talk about some of the good things we got done that are not being reported. Good. And with all these people here, I think I've done all the talking I'm going to do today. I'm going to turn it over to them. So
pass it down to Senator Hensley. Senator Hensley, you've not been with us before, and especially appreciate the drive from Hohenwald this morning. I think that's a pretty good hike to get here by the time we go on the air, so I appreciate your being with us. But in the budget, was there any in particular items there that affected your constituents and what you were focused on?
Well, first of all, it's a privilege for me to be here, and I got to experience some of the congestion coming from Hohenwald, coming through Spring Hill and Saturn Parkway. So deal with that all the time, and I look forward to when we can really do something about all of the congestion. But it's an honor for me to be here, and I serve on the Finance Committee, the Health Committee, and the Education Committee. I'm a family practitioner in my other life as well, so healthcare has always been important, and education. I'll just touch on some education issues. Education was very important. It's very, very important to all of us, and education, K through 12 education, especially, is one of the most important things that the state does, I think, of funding it and taking care of education. We put a lot of money into education. This year, we put $140 million into funding SROs at all the schools. So, of course, school safety was one of the big issues this year, especially towards the end of the session. But even at the beginning of the session, the governor had proposed a lot of issues around school safety, and one of them is funding SROs in every school, $140 million. We put more money into paying the teachers, passed a bill that would increase the minimum salary for teachers over the next 4 years it would go to it's about 39,000 now. Over the next 4 years, it would go up to $50,000 a year as the minimum salary for our teachers. So trying to take care of that, trying to put more money into the teachers' raises this year. We passed a school safety bill that not only provides for SROs in the schools, but provides grant money, and the governor had put $20 million of safety money into the budget, and the legislature added $20 million to that, so a total of $40 million for schools to use to improve safety at their buildings. And we increased private schools, we put $7 million. The governor put $7 million, we added $7 million, so $14 million that private schools can even use to help increase safety at private schools. We changed the third grade retention law that was in the news since we passed the bill last year, trying to improve our students' reading levels, because in Tennessee, in the third grade, only about a third of those students are reading proficiently. So we passed a bill last year that said those students could be held back if they didn't make adequate progress on their TCAPs. But we did put things in place where they could attend a summer camp or get tutoring and still be promoted. But there was a lot of issues about it depending on one test, on that TCAP test. So we did add another test in, so their final benchmark test that can be used as well. So some of those other students can be passed on to the fourth grade as long as they have a tutor. So we're just trying to improve education in Tennessee. We put more money into the budget so that the summer learning camps can go from kindergarten to the 8th grade. We had just put it so that it was after the 3rd grade, but those summer reading camps will be for all the grades now, and the tutoring in all the grades. So trying to do all we can to help education, to improve education in the state for all the businesses coming in. Another issue that we did with the education, higher education, was we put $1 billion into improving all of the vocational schools around the state. And I see Bethany here with Columbia State and Rick, and we're fortunate to have and be here at a Columbia State campus, but we're fortunate to have Columbia State in the area. But we put $1 billion in the budget to improve all of the vocational schools around the state. We have 27 vocational schools, so many of those had old buildings going back to the 60s. So all of them are getting new buildings, some of them completely new buildings, or renovating what they have, but a total of about $1 billion of one-time money into the vocational schools, trying to improve that and trying to make it easier for our high school students to transition into vocational schools, and even making it so that some of them can have a certificate when they graduate from high school. But education is important, and the state's doing all we can to try to improve that. And I think that was one of the big things that we did this year. And this governor and Governor Haslam, before Governor Lee, have been focused on education, and we're trying to improve our education in Tennessee.
Now, I feel like the teacher where the student got a hold of the copy of the test before test day, because you checked off, I think, every item I had under school safety and facilities and so forth. I will, one little tidbit that I will ask you though, Senator, is there are, I think, 6 new campuses for the Tennessee College of Applied Technologies. Where are those going to be? Do we know that?
Well, those new campuses are really extensions of the old campuses. So I don't think there's any real new, except there's one new campus in West Tennessee for the Blue Oval City, that was already in place going back last year. But we're talking about new, these are really extensions of campuses that we have now. So they're not really technically new vocational schools, but extensions of ones that are already located somewhere.
Pass it back to Representative Warner here. Todd, the one thing that Jack didn't cover under transportation, I meant to ask him, but since you're right there next to the senator, I'll just ask you. But there's $350 million in what they call state aid, which I think goes directly to cities and counties from the state for road projects and that sort of thing. Do we have any idea how much of that's going to come to Williamson County, to the city of Franklin? I don't expect y'all to know that.
I think I've seen something, 5 million, yeah.
So,
I think Marshall County's getting 3 million down there.
okay, so each entity will get a pretty good bit to add to their kitties. Do we know what it's earmarked for around here, gentlemen?
I think it's mainly what, county and city roads. I don't know what the split is here in county roads. Does the cities get any part of that?
They get an allocation based on the registration of vehicles and such. I'm not sure how much each city's going to get, but I know that.
Let's get a mic in front of whoever's talking here, so so everybody can hear what's going on.
Thank you. So part of the question was the $350 million Jack talked about, and well, he covered it well. And also, I would like to talk about, Dave, you got Paul Deggs coming on the 2nd of June, I understand, for policy talks. Is that still on?
That date, I'm not sure about yet. We're working on it. So
Working on a date, but Paul has said, Paul is the former chief engineer for TDOT. I believe he's going to be here for our next policy talks. That should be a very informative one with a lot of details on how projects are completed and bid. And
right, Paul Deggs has been basically running TDOT for what, 30 years?
Yes, and he's retired.
And he's retiring, so he can talk freely about what's going on there now. And we look forward to having him as our next guest here. So
Don't want to steal his thunder, but again, the county road fund, I believe it's gone from the $1 million to $5 million, and this has been a tremendous increase. And again, I don't know what projects they're going to target those on, but one thing we've looked at, and we talked about the fees for electric vehicles. Right now, that money that we collect, the $100 registration fee, does not go to locals. It only goes to the state. Excuse me. So as that increases over the year, we're going to share more of that money with the locals, because right now, electric vehicles make up 0.4% of all the cars in Tennessee, and they anticipate by 2028 they'll go from 16,000 to could possibly go up to 200,000. They weigh more, they put a lot more wear and tear, and the fee of that will increase also to, I believe, $274 by 2026. So we will see more money going to the locals from that fund right now.
okay, for the radio listeners, that was Sam Whitson from the 65th District. Sam, since you've got the mic, do you want to talk about the Ethics Committee?
Yeah, thank you. Which one? I did carry some ethics legislation, 3 bills this year. I think that's where you're heading, I hope. So there's some things I can talk about, my legislation, other things there's a process that we work through. But did carry 3 bills for the Bureau of for campaign finance and the Ethics Bureau at the state. And one of the big changes we did is that when people retire from this job or no longer run again, they have a campaign fund. And we found that one individual decided not to run again. He had over $40,000 in his campaign account, and he passed away, and we have no idea what happened to that $40,000, where it went and how it was spent. So what we're doing, the change of the law is that every year, if you're not running again, you maintain a campaign account. Every year you have to submit a bank statement. showing that you still have that money and how that money's being spent. I think that's an important thing.
Surprised we don't already have that.
There's a lot of things we could do better too. And also, we required that each municipality and county to update us on their ethics counselor or the person responsible for that. That's changed. We did better reporting process on complaints and some internal actions for the registry and the bureau. So anyway,
Okay.
it was a busy year for our ethics legislation, and I'm proud to carry it. And I look forward to, if other things come forward, we can carry more legislation next year.
Very good. Not sure who to pass this to, so raise your hand if you want to get the next question, then I'll tell you what it is. But
So we can find out what's in it.
But Jake, we're going to get a couple of tax breaks this year as a result of the action y'all took in the legislature. Tell us about the grocery tax holiday, the business tax cuts, and that sort of thing as best you can describe it. And then might pass it back to Jack to get into details if we need to, or maybe Representative Bullzo. So.
Sure. Well, because of the budget that we passed, we're able to extend that grocery holiday from 1 month to 3 months. So from August to October, I believe is what it is, you have a tax holiday on groceries, which is huge. And I'm glad we were able to get that passed. The business tax, and my mind is going blank on that one right now, so forgive me. That was F&E, wasn't it? Yeah. So given an extension to a break on F&E.
Right. Representative Bullzo, can you give us more details on that, or I'm going to give the mic back to Jack here in a minute.
I think I can, Dave, but let me circle back to your first question to Leader Johnson about the budget, because there are 3 things that I wanted to highlight about the budget as well. One thing that is not noticed immediately is that we're actually reducing our dependence on federal dollars beginning with this year. In the $56.2 billion budget historically, we've received about 20% of our revenue from the federal government, which is not particularly good because obviously whenever you're taking money from the federal government, it comes with strings attached. And so we sacrifice some of our freedom and our liberty by doing that. And here, this year, we've been able to reduce the dependency on federal dollars to somewhere between 16 and 18%. So that's a very important point. Secondly, we've got obviously just a great pro-life, pro-family governor in Governor Lee, and he was committed when the Dobbs decision was passed to make sure that we provided support to those who are in crisis pregnancies. And so this budget includes $20 million to go to crisis pregnancy centers all over the state to help young mothers who may be in trouble, because although abortion on demand is no longer permitted in Tennessee, we still have crisis pregnancies. And the governor had his priorities straight when he went ahead and made sure that we had money set aside to assist those who might actually find themselves in a crisis pregnancy. And then third, and this even gets less play, the governor's budget, which was approved by the General Assembly, included $75 million to modernize our civil and criminal court systems across the state, because we've got 95 counties, which means we've got 95 chancery court systems and 95 circuit court systems. And all the court systems use different types of filing requirements. Some are electronic, but they all use different types of electronic filing. Some are still on paper. And obviously, the civil justice system is very expensive for normal folks to use, as any of you who own small businesses know. And what this budget did was to allow $75 million to be deployed to create a statewide electronic filing system, which modernizes, simplifies, and makes more efficient our court system across the state, which ultimately is going to redound to the benefit of small business owners, individuals, and obviously large businesses as well, as we move our court system further and further into the 21st century. And then with regard to F&E taxes, one of the great things about Tennessee is that we are the second lowest tax state in the entire country, and we are continuing to pare back on taxes so that businesses get to keep more of their revenues for their employees and families that get to keep more of their money to raise their kids, educate their kids, do what needs to be done. And so both, we've reduced the franchise and excise tax and privilege taxes. There's still some work to be done on both of those. But in general, it's about $400 million, Dave, that we've shaved off of F&E taxes across the state in order to allow small families, businesses to keep their money.
Great, great. Anybody have any, I've got a few other bullet points I'm going to ask if unless somebody wants to go down anything in particular. And just, I'm going to hit these real quick, and if you've got comments to add color to them, but $200 million for a new performing arts center in Nashville, $350 million to Memphis for their sports stadiums and arenas down there. I guess that's an answer to the $500 million last year to the Titans Stadium. Is Chattanooga and Knoxville going to be in line next, or how are we going to balance the scales there? Have we had any discussions about that? Apparently not, from the looks on your faces.
Just say something about that. We tried to take the $500 million out last year, and then I actually had an amendment trying to take that $350 million out this year. But you're exactly right. Last year it was Nashville, $500 million. This year went to $350 million, went to Memphis for the FedEx Forum and for the Memphis Grizzlies and to help with their sports arenas. But the next year there'll be something different. But so there's different opinions about what we should do about that. So, but there was a significant amount of one-time money. Of course, both of those were one-time money. The $500 million was a state sponsoring bonds. And the $350 million, I think, was just giving them money this year.
Now, since you've got the mic, Senator, I think we've got some new state parks that were in the budget this time. One of them is the Devil's Backbone down near Hohenwald. Tell us what in the world that is.
That's right. That's a spot on the Natchez Trace Park.
It's not your backbone, right?
It's not mine, no. Devil's Backbone is just, and I'm not really sure why they even call it that, but it's a spot on the Natchez Trace now where you can stop, and there's a scenic area, and there is about $600,000 in the budget to improve that area. There'll be some full-time people there and making it into a mini park, and there's other money in the budget for other parks across the state, so improving other parks. The park at Chapel Hill got about $45 million. Henry Horton State Park got a significant amount of money to improve their restaurant at Henry Horton. So other parks across the state are getting upgrades, but Devil's Backbone was one of those. So as you drive down the Trace and leaving Lewis County going up towards here, you can already stop at Devil's Backbone, but it will be better in the future.
Got another reason to take a trip down the Trace now. So.
That's right. Have a reason to do that.
Yeah. One thing that I haven't heard mentioned, and I'm going to step out into the audience here just a minute, but I heard a lot about it. It seemed like in the State of the State address and last year, but broadband. And was there anything new, Jack, in the budget this year for broadband, or just a continuation?
I don't think we put any, the thing is, we've put hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into broadband over the last few years, and I think we've reached a point to where we've kind of maxed out capacity. And so we are all very committed to make sure that every home in Tennessee has access to broadband. And we of course, we passed the legislation a few years ago to allow the internet providers to partner with the electric co-ops, and that's been very successful in many parts of the state. And again, we have deployed, I can't remember how many hundreds of millions of dollars to help expedite that out into the rural areas. So we're making good progress. But I don't recall anything new in that particular area. Really, even if we had appropriated more money, there's not enough capacity out there to continue to build that. Great. One of our audience participants this morning, he didn't know he's going to be a participant, but Joe Marchisoni, thank you, Joe. Stand up and tell us
Joe, you're with United Communications, and y'all are doing quite a bit of the broadband expansion here, I think, in Williamson County and counties south of here. Tell us what we should see here in the next few months.
Well, a few months is is kind of, as he said, it's hard to build out because we are maxed out of capacity. That's true as far as what we're building out. We're not the only ones. There's obviously several carriers throughout Tennessee. We're an independent carrier headquartered in Chapel Hill. We have an office now here in Berry Farms as well. But actually, it goes back to Governor Haslam. He started years ago about putting money in the budget for broadband. And I think this year was, 200 and something million, and United got 56.4 million. So I'd like to say thank you for that, and we are spending that very well. We will come in under budget and on time again like we have in the past. But one thing we are, and that's why we're getting a lot of the money. We got most of the money compared to any other carrier in the state, just because of, I think, the past relationship that our CEO, William Bradford's had with these folks, and they see what we do and making it happen. So we're building out already in Marshall County, Bedford County, but to your point, in Williamson County, we're growing this area. Mayor Anderson has been very helpful as well. He wants to see Williamson County built out, every home in Williamson County to have broadband service. So the county has participated as well, providing money. And then United is obviously participating as well. We're spending our money as well. When you get the state money, obviously, we're told where to build out and how to get those customers. And that money's really designated toward people that have DSL or three megabits or less. So it's not going to Franklin or where there's already a lot of coverage. It's going to where there's absolutely no coverage or a little bit of coverage, the money we get from the state. So we're building that out in Williamson County, as well as Franklin will build out. But at this point, there's no reason to compete with the big carriers because there's a lot of growth in the county that we can build out now. And that's really where our focus is. Fairview, a lot of Williamson County that doesn't have the broadband service that we have.
Have you ever heard of East Sheepneck Road?
I have not, but I'm sure you're real close. Like everybody else, you're just down the road from fiber and you want us to connect it, I'm sure.
Right on the
Thank y'all very much.
Murray-Marshall County line. So Chuck, from Middle Tennessee Electric.
Well, I was just going to add to what Joe said. Our commitment is to serve everyone. And we take for granted living in this county that most everybody has broadband. But Joe said one thing that we're finding a lot of, and we've actually added it to our mission, is that there are a lot of underserved people that we're finding. And when I say that, folks that can't get out on the internet, that can't do Zoom calls. And as we experienced in the past with schools, that is huge. So we don't want to leave anybody without proper broadband service. And I think that's one reason why we're committed with United in this process with the help of the fellows up front, to do that. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well. But
Right. Of course, everybody's welcome, but that bird out there, somebody must have not invited him in, but he's not happy. Sure.
Jack mentioned the electric cooperatives, and I did fail to mention Middle Tennessee Electric has been very, very instrumental in our growth as well in the past 4 years. They purchased us about 4 years ago, I guess. They've been and that was a great law because it allowed electric companies, cooperatives to be involved with that. But that's helped just spiral our growth phenomenally. So that's been grateful to have Middle Tennessee Electric as part of it. But thank you for passing that law to make it happen.
Thanks for filling in some blanks there for us. Gentlemen, I think we've covered the budget pretty well. Anything that we missed there? The one thing that's being discussed now is the governor calling a special session. Obviously, I said we weren't going to talk about what the media's discussed adequately, but as I understand what the governor is wanting, it's what some states call a red flag law, but I think maybe more accurately, I wrote this down, access to gun control with mental health conditions applied to it. What Jack, can you describe what the governor thinks he would like to accomplish, and whether that not the pros and cons, but the likelihood of things like that happening here in Tennessee.
Well, the governor has indicated that he would like to call us into a special session. I don't know exactly when that will be. Could be later this summer, perhaps early fall, to talk about public safety. And I think equally as important, if not more important, is access to mental health treatment. One of the things we know about these horrific events that take place, including what took place at Covenant School, is that the people who are capable of committing these heinous acts are in a mental health crisis. And so what we are doing is having lots of conversations with our mental health professionals, law enforcement, school officials, to figure out what Tennessee can do relative to those people who are in a mental health crisis. And there are lots of thoughts, lots of ideas that are being circulated, but I think we all share a commitment, regardless if we may disagree on the correct mechanism to use or the path to pursue, that we need to do everything we can to make it so that these people that are in a mental health crisis can get the treatment that they need. We have laws on the books now relative to involuntary incapacitation or involuntary commitment to mental health treatment. I think we need to look at that, how that works. We have laws on the books relative to being adjudicated as mentally defective. Under current law, an individual who is involuntarily committed or who has been adjudicated as being mentally defective, it is illegal for them to own, purchase, or possess firearms. Those laws are on the books already. And so when we have a problem, I think the first thing we need to do is look at what is on the books now and how those laws can be applied and enforced more effectively. And so I think you're going to see a lot of conversation. If the governor does, in fact, decide to pursue a special session, you're going to see a lot of that conversation. It's really already taking place. I know I'm meeting with people. I'm sure all my colleagues are as well. Lots of meetings, lots of discussions about what we need to do in Tennessee relative to, making sure that these horrific events don't happen in the future.
Senator Hensley, you're a medical doctor, and I'm sure you've had conversations with some of your colleagues in the medical field about how to do this or how it might be effective or how it might be misused. What would your comments be?
Well, certainly we see, and I just heard on the news today, Serbia just had their second mass shooting. They had a shooting at a school last week, I think, and 8 or 9 children killed by a 13-year-old, and then the last day or two, they had another mass shooting of 8 or 9 people killed. And their answer over there, the president of the country is going to take everybody's gun away from them. That's their answer in Serbia. Of course, other countries are different than our country. We have a Second Amendment that guarantees people's right to have a firearm. So we have to balance that right that we can't take away from citizens. And we don't need to do that because people have that Second Amendment right here, and we're different than these other countries, European countries, well, every other country in the world, I think. So people have that right, and we as a legislature have to guarantee people have that right. So there's a fine line, just like Jack had mentioned, between what we do about mental health issues and people that have mental health. And I've dealt with mental health issues over the years. I'm a family practitioner, and any physician deals with those issues. But there's a big difference between somebody being mentally ill, being depressed, and we have millions of people in this country depressed, many people taking medications, and some people are looking at medications that people take may influence them being homicidal, suicidal. So there's a lot of things we have to look at, but just because somebody's mentally ill we can't take their right away from them to have a firearm. But certainly if they're homicidal or they're suicidal, we need to provide treatment, and we are trying to provide treatment. And one thing we didn't mention about the budget was about money that we're putting into the DCS program, trying to deal with our foster children and issues with that, adding money to the providers' pay going forward. And we heard about DCS issues in the news and about foster children. So we are trying to improve that, and that goes along with a lot of children are in the foster system because their parents are addicted to drugs or they have mental health issues. So mental health is a problem, and so we'll look at all those things and see what we can do. We all want to prevent anyone but being killed, whether it's an individual that's just being assaulted on the streets like we see in many of the big cities, or certainly the mass shootings we see. And Tennessee has been very fortunate not to have many mass shootings, but one is certainly too many. So we need to look at that and see, and we will look at everything just like we do other issues. We don't just need to have a reaction to it. We need to look at it and see what really is out there that we can do to protect citizens.
Mr. Bolza, you got.
Thank you, Dave. I mean, your question dealt specifically with the governor's proposal regarding this thing called an extreme risk protection order, or an ERPO. And let me just say a couple of things about it. One, I think all of us up here are committed to having safe communities and having safe schools. I think it's always a good idea to bring the legislature together to focus on how do we make our communities safer? How do we make our schools safer? And if the governor wants to call us back into session to do that, I'm all for it. One of our great Supreme Court justices over the years was Louis Brandeis back in the 1930s. And one of the things that he famously wrote in a case is that one of the benefits of our federal system is that we've got 50 states that we can use as laboratories for democracy. Let's see what's going on in some of these states and whether they should be adopted, the policies should be adopted in other states. And we've got this nonprofit organization called the RAND Corporation, completely nonpartisan. It's made up of academics, economists, microeconomists, and they recently published a 429-page study on things like ERPOs and other measures, and they've analyzed from a statistical perspective whether they're effective. And that report simply indicates that there's no conclusive evidence of any kind that states that have adopted these things called red flag laws have actually reduced any type of what is termed gun violence in any measurable respect. In fact, the report indicates that when Indiana adopted its ERPO law, it actually went up. That is, the incidence of gun violence, because part of what you're doing with that law is you're sending law enforcement officers to the home of someone who's mentally ill to say, we're taking your weapons away, which obviously puts them at great risk. And one of the things that Leader Johnson pointed out is that in Tennessee, we already have a very good procedure. It's called warrantless detention, and it's in Title 33-6-402, that very specifically says that if we have someone in the community who's suffering from some mental health crisis that might cause that person to harm himself or others, we do have a basis upon the certificate of need signed by 2 physicians to go in and, without a warrant, actually detain that person temporarily to see whether or not this is in fact a case where someone might need to be committed civilly, either voluntarily or involuntarily. So, as much respect as I have for our governor, and I think he's done a great job, I do not agree with this proposal for a red flag law in Tennessee, not just because it's not been proven to be effective in the 17 states where it's been adopted, but I have grave due process concerns, particularly under the Fourth Amendment, because one of the things that is a hallmark of American justice is that it's fair, both in the civil system and in the criminal system. And when you either, without notice to a citizen, rush in and take firearms away, or you give them 3 or 5 days notice to hire counsel, spend $10,000 and try to defend themselves against a charge that they're mentally unfit, that just, to me, creates serious due process concerns. And the third problem with it is it's just unconstitutional. We had Justice Thomas's opinion in the New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin case on June the 23rd of last year, 2022, where the Supreme Court very clearly said that where the government, state or federal, adopts a law that implicates the Second Amendment, it's only going to be constitutional to the extent that it's consistent with our nation's tradition of firearm regulation. And these red flag laws simply fall outside the scope of what traditionally has been regulated. So everyone up here is interested in public safety. I think Leader Johnson's correct. We need to focus on the mental health issue. And I'm actually meeting with gun manufacturers in Tennessee next week to try to bring them into the discussion, because they obviously have a vested interest in making sure that their products are not improperly used. No one wants to have guns in the hands of mentally ill people who would use them to harm themselves or other. The challenge is, how do we separate those who are mentally ill and might use guns to harm themselves or others from those weapons? So I'm all for getting back into session, focusing on public safety, focusing on school safety, and doing what we can to make our citizens more safe.
Thank you. That having a litigation attorney on the panel is informative, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? We're running limited time now, and we've got several things I'd just like to work through, including Todd Warner telling us where he got his socks. I can't describe those, but they're very colorful. They've got the Tennessee TriStar all over them. Where did you find those?
I think there's a store in the mall. I forget to get to forgive me the name of the store here and the Galleria, but they come out of the mall there.
Anything particular in Henry Horton Park that we're going to see differently down there as a result of this budget?
I think last year they completed the restaurant and visitor center down there. It's all new stuff. I invite you folks to come out and check it out. It's my understanding that we're about to get a new inn. The inn down there is outdated. I don't know if any of you has had the chance here lately to travel to any of our state parks, but we was fortunate enough to have a caucus retreat over at Pickwick, and it was really nice. A couple years ago when we went over there, they had a new resort, and I'm hoping that that's what Henry Horton turns out, something like that. But it's really nice, and I invite you out to our state parks, and I commend the governor on setting some money aside to develop these new state parks. If you come by Horton on the weekends, it is packed down there, and people will, as we continue to grow here in Middle Tennessee, I think people, need a place to go and enjoy the outdoors.
Now they can go to Devil's Backbone. So, one of the things that the media has discussed some, but if any of you would like to provide a little color, you're kind of rough on Metro Nashville. They kind of rubbed our nose in not inviting the Republican National Convention to Middle Tennessee. So now we're going to reduce the size of the Metro Council from 40 to 20. We're going to pull back some revenue, I think, from the convention center. I don't know the details on that. I hope some of y'all do. Restructured the airport authority, the sports authority. What's the ultimate goal and result of that going to be? I know Sam's itching to get the mic back, but
well, let me comment on that first.
Go ahead.
A couple things, and Senator Johnson or Sam down here, Mike, and Representative Whitsey, Mike, can do a better job than I can. But what people across the state need to understand is, and I didn't support the $500 million going to the Titans. I was a no vote on that. But that's your tax dollars. You deserve, and people across this state deserve, a voice that's on that sports authority in Nashville. It needs to be spread out. I commend the leader. I commend Speaker Sexton and the governor for changing some of this stuff that gives Tennessee across the state a voice on some of these boards where their tax dollars is going. You've heard the old saying, taxation without representation, and that's the way it's been. But we've changed that now, and I commend our leaders for doing so.
Sam, you want to add any color to that?
Play it again, Sam.
First of all, I want to say, Gino and Jake and I, we do not have a state park in our district, okay? So we would love to have one day. So, and we don't have an airport or prison either, do we? So we don't want a prison. So, hey, first of all, on the airport authority, there was some compromise worked out toward the end. Currently, the mayor of Nashville appoints all members of the airport authority, and the final bill came down to 8 members. And it will still give Nashville the opportunity to have a majority on that board. 2 from the speaker, 2 from the lieutenant governor, 2 from the governor, and 2 from the mayor of Nashville. And one each from each one of those 4 people have to be residents of Davidson County. So the mayor of Nashville can appoint 2, so that would give them a majority of 5 Davidson County residents on the airport board. So that's how the final compromise worked out on that. As far as the city council, or the Metro Council on that, I'm a local control guy. I did not vote for that. Some people said if you really wanted to punish Nashville, double it to 80 members on the council. So, but they reduced it to 20. It's been stopped by court action, I understand. And the convention center money is make sure that it pays off the debt for that. That was part of the legislation on that. So that was the actions on those 3 things. And I think the compromise on the airport, and it's a well-run airport, and we must admit it is a regional airport. And again, there was, to me, it's a local control issue, and I think that was the best compromise they could come up with.
Very good. I think we've actually covered most of the things I had on my notes. I think we've got a Juneteenth state holiday now that the state employees will get to enjoy. And some more paid leave if they have a child, or 6 weeks, which that's a pretty sweet perk, I think, for young families. Hang on a minute. Something was on the tip of my tongue there a minute ago, but I don't remember what it was, so we'll just move on and see if we have any questions in the audience. Sometimes we don't have time for that, but we've got a little more time this morning, and we've got a nice-looking audience here. Come on, somebody put their hand up, or I'll call on somebody else. But really appreciate having all you here, and having the 2 new members of our panel with us this morning has added color to what we do. Jack, we're always appreciative of your input because you have the inside track with the governor's ear. And is there anything else that we haven't heard about that you'd like to share that we can announce here this morning?
Well, one thing I do, and Sam touched on this, but I do want to correct the record on one thing you said relative to what took place with Nashville. We did not take any money from the convention center or the revenue streams that come as a result of the convention center. What we did is make sure that Nashville can't use that as a slush fund for other things, because that's not, when we passed the legislation to create the special tax zones for that convention center, certainly our intention was that that money that is collected would be used to pay off the debt, as Sam said, and to maintain the facility that was there. But in recent years, because it has been very successful, it has generated a tremendous amount of revenue, which is a good thing, but Nashville had been diverting some of that money to other purposes. And so what we did, and I sponsored that legislation, and we just clarified, we didn't take any of it. We just said you have to keep that in order to maintain the facility. I can't remember what the figure was, but it was literally, I think, tens of millions of dollars to replace the carpet in the Nashville Convention Center. So that's a good example. You have a massive facility like that. We want to make sure that they've got that money in reserves to be able to not only service the debt, but maintain the facility for many years to come. So we just put stricter guardrails on that.
I'm going to call on one of our audience members out here, Sheila Cleveland. Stand up, please. And the legislature overhauled the funding mechanism for the school systems last year. And do we have any experience now to see how that's working for Williamson County, and what you might suggest as additional tweaks to that? She was a member of our school board here in Williamson County. I should.
Actually, we just got our numbers, and it wasn't as much as we expected, but it is good. We did get funding like we expected, And I cannot quote you on that number right now because we're just now got the budget to our county commission, but it is very helpful for the money we got. So we do appreciate that.
We're still learning more about it. And thank you, Sheila. We, again, appreciate the time that you gentlemen have taken to be with us this morning. These guys have been unbelievably busy this year. And it means a lot to us at the chamber and me personally for you all to take the time out to come and be with us. I try to be respectful of your time and cover as much as we can in a short period, but we do appreciate that. We've got a lot of other people that it takes to make this show happen, and I'm going to run down a little bit Columbia State and Dr. Darrell Lampley and his staff. Mary Beth Shalley actually does the work, I think, but we appreciate y'all making us welcome here at Columbia State. We got a couple other Columbia State people with us here this morning, and we like to get as many people to this beautiful campus as we can because it certainly is taking shape here in Franklin, and everyone needs to see it. Creed Henderson and his crew at WCTV, if you've ever watched one of the broadcasts there, he makes us look really good, and thank you, Creed, for that. And Tom Lawrence is always keeping us on the air at WAKM, and we appreciate you getting us out to your listeners there as well, Tom. Vanderbilt University with Nathan Green and Lynn Maddox do a little funding to help make it happen along with AT&T. Our friend Dennis Wagner there is kind of the point man there. Our chamber staff, Kel McDowell is the quarterback on this effort, and he got some good PR out this time. I've been meaning to tell you that, Kel. And of course, Nancy Conway kind of keeps me informed on some of the things going on around the county so I can stay informed there. But we appreciate the staff there. Listeners here, love having a crowd here, and we appreciate y'all being here. Our coffee and biscuits come from the Lion Leadership Group, which is the McDonald's franchisee for most of these McDonald's in our area. So go by the McDonald's and get another biscuit if there's not any left out here. The next show, we're not quite sure about. Again, like we mentioned, we hope to have Paul Deggs. How do you pronounce his name? Deggs. Paul has been the chief administrator at TDOT for, I think, 30 years, and now that he's retiring, I'm looking forward to finding out more about the mechanics behind the scene there, and hope you all will be back with us next month. So that takes care of us this morning. Hope you'll be back. Thank you very much.